Hey class, it's me, Professor Thompson. I hope you're having a wonderful whatever day it is that you're listening to it. I'm going to assume Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. I love starting class with the theory of knowledge. The theory of knowledge kind of explains how we get information in different ways. It's a great foundation for science, and it's also a great foundation for psychology because when we're talking about human behavior, there are lots of inputs that we get. We have our own internal mental processes. We have the things that we experience and then process. We have more advanced things that are unique to humans as a species. All these things represent aspects of our experience as humans. And because we're studying human behavior, psychology, it's helpful to have a framework for understanding these things and why they might be helpful and why they might not be. So, without further ado, the theory of knowledge. So, the theory of knowledge reports that there are 8 ways of knowing. You will see them here on the screen. Look, I can even draw, sense perception. And then there's language and intuition and faith, memory, imagination, emotion, and reason. Imagination is so long a word that it couldn't all fit on one line. That happens sometimes. So, these 8 things deter or dis are what's the word I'm trying to say? These 8 things are different ways of gaining information. So we have sense perception, which, fun fact, you're using right now. Your eyes, these are your eyes. Ooh, so good. Look at those cool eyebrows. Are looking at this screen, right? And they are seeing that something is happening. If you saw me draw like a crazy, squiggle, then you'd go, oh, I know that that's there because I'm seeing it. Your ears, that's an ear, and they come in pairs. There we go, 2 ears. Now it's a butterfly. Wow, so majestic. So you're I'm not good at drawing butterflies. So the it just looks like a slug with like horns and wings. Anyway, your ears are hearing things, right? Your five senses, we'll talk about later how there are more than five senses, but we're just going to pretend like there are five right now. They get information from the outside world: smells, tastes, feelings, things that you hear, things that you see, and our brains process and perceive them. Now, are our senses always correct? Are we ever misled by our senses? Yes, 100%, right? Sometimes I'll tell you a very funny story. Um, a, I'm not sure when you're listening to it. It might be the far off future, but there was once a time in human history where we were low on hand sanitizer and it was very hard to get. So my friend who was working for a company had like these promo bottles of hand sanitizer and gave me one. I was like, oh my God, I miss hand sanitizer. So I used it one day while I was working late at night. And then I every so often I would smell something that smelled like lightly like burning. And so like I was like, oh, well, maybe my roommates left something on in the kitchen, right? So because that happens, everybody at some point leaves the oven on for too long. So I go to the kitchen, nothing. Actually, as I go to the kitchen, the smell starts to go away. So then I do the thing where I like go into the hallway, nothing. I go to my bedroom, I don't smell it. I sit back down. I start to smell it again, right? I go back to working. I'm smelling it. So I'm like, there's something burning. And so I get up, I walk around, I like sniff around my room to see if it's like a cable that started to like fry because sometimes cables go bad. That has happened to me a couple times. Nope, all my power cables are fine. Nothing's on fire. I sit back down. I start smelling it again, and then I think I'm having a stroke. I thought I was too young for one, but this is probably how I die. It's okay. Let me make peace with it. And then I noticed that the smell kept on going away, and then I was like, why is it strong sometimes and not strong at other times, right? So it turns out that the hand sanitizer is basically a balance of alcohol and aloe. And also sometimes you'll hear a cat meow in the background when you say hand sanitizer. The people who mixed it put in too much aloe, which made it have a very distinct and strong smell. Whenever I was working and I raised my hands close to my face, I smelt it, but I didn't realize that I was smelling my hands because whoever thinks about their hands smell. So my perception of the sense that I was experiencing led me from thinking that my house was on fire to thinking that I had a stroke. So sometimes our senses deceive us, or our perceptions of what we sense deceive us. So that's a very fun example of how you can't trust your senses. Language takes sense perception one step further, right? If I were to write something like this, that obviously is not just a series of random symbols. That is A13C or ABC. That's a perceptual thing. You see letters and then you assume all of them are letters, but they could not be. But with language, right, we're using symbols, we're using sounds to represent concepts, right? If I wrote the number 15, that isn't actually 15 of something. That is just a symbol that we use to represent the idea that something could have the quantity of 15. But that is understood, right? I write that, you know what I'm talking about. All these little squigglies that you see right here, they have meaning, and you're looking at them and understanding the meaning, or you're hearing the words that I'm saying and understanding the meaning. That is language. Now, language is 100% perfect. We never misinterpret it, right? The scariest thing that you can ever receive in a text message is this. It's fine, period. So, what does that mean? Is it fine? Is it not fine? There are times, so in my opinion, like 80% of the time that you say somebody say it's fine, it's actually not fine, right? Especially with the period at the end, so definitive, right? So sometimes people aren't aware of this and they'll be like, oh, that's fine. And they will just say that, not realizing that if you say that, people might assume that things are not fine. So language can uh, is useful because it helps us understand what another person is saying. It would be very hard for me to convey the course concepts to you without language, spoken or written. So it's very important, but things can be misconstrued, right? I give a example and a definition in class, and then I'm like, great, they understand it, but then you write about the concept on your test, and then I'm like, oh no, they did not understand it. So language is important and helpful, but it's not always perfect. Then we have intuition, which is just a feeling based on some like gut sensation. So some people refer to it as like a gut feeling. So sometimes you just get the sense that something is off. You don't necessarily know why, but it feels wrong. The classic like TV trope is, the like maybe it's a gang or like a group of people who are going to like meet up with somebody to like do a deal, and then one person's like something doesn't feel right, and then you hear freeze police, and it's like it's a sting, right? They betrayed us or something like that. So there's just a feeling that something isn't right. Now, oftentimes, these intuitions are just based off of repeated experiences that we've gotten used to. So you know that, like, oh, hey, this is what I expect. And then something feels off. And then you're like, oh, no, this isn't, something's wrong, right? I think the best example of this is when you're listening to a remix of a song that you like, and it starts off normally, and then you hear like maybe like a drum come in, or like some other vocals, and you're just like, no, 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 this isn't, something's wrong. So the or this is a weird example, but if you heard the song Despacito before Justin Bieber like did his version of it, and you're like, oh man, I love this song, and then you're like, wait, hold on, what is happening? Something doesn't feel right. Did I? No, this isn't right, right? So that initial, like, I'm not listening to the same song, that's an intuition, right? And then later you go, oh, this must be a remix. And then that's using your reasoning, which we'll talk about later. Then we have knowledge based off of belief or spiritual conviction, which is faith, right? So this can be as simple as the assumptions that we make that found our reality, or more spiritual convictions. Like, so for example, if you believe in reincarnation, it is a belief, right? It's very hard to prove that reincarnation happens. Like, if you really get to the brass tacks, actual definitive proof of it is difficult, right? If you have a like guardian spirit or something like that, a lot of it is based off of proof, or sorry, belief. And I'm not saying that to like be insulting to other people's religions or spiritualities, but at a certain point, everything that we believe in the world, or think that we know is true, boils down to a specific belief, right? So that our friends love us and care for us, right? Well, we can say, well, they do nice things for us, but what if it's a plan? What if we're on the Truman Show? What if if you haven't seen that movie, just Wikipedia it, and then you'll understand what I'm talking about. What if they're all like just like being nice to me as like a to get me, right? So we just assume that our friends actually do care about us, or maybe you assume that your friends don't actually care about you, and hey, it's okay, they do, I promise. But our assumptions about the world can, at a certain point, are necessary. We need to believe things because, as mentioned before, there are some things that cannot be proven definitively. So you just have to decide what you want to believe in. Oh man, I'm totally blanking on this last one. It's not even the last one. I know the next one. What is it? Just kidding, it's memory. Memory is great because it is the thing that allows you to exist in the world. If you did not have memory, you wouldn't have a sense of self, because our sense of self is based off of our understanding of our past experiences in the context of current experiences, right? So if I didn't remember that I was a teacher, then I, why would I be sitting in front of a microphone right now talking to you, right? Uh, what would I even talk about? Because I wouldn't remember the information that I'm trying to convey to you. So, in order to exist as humans, right, we need to have memory. Now, our memories are always perfect. They never mislead us, right? We get into an argument with a friend or a significant other or a family member. And then a week later, we say, well, you said this, and our memory of the incident is perfect. Or, we witness a crime and the police ask us what we saw, and then we remember it exactly as it happened. And there's never been a case where somebody has been convicted of a crime and went to jail for a long period of time and later found out, well, they knew that they weren't, but later it was found out that that person was completely innocent, and due to eyewitness testimony, they went to jail even though they hadn't done a thing. Yeah, that happens, right? So our memory is great because it allows us to exist and be ourselves. But when we overly rely on it and we assume that just because we remember something a certain way, that means that it is a certain way, then we run into problems. It's not easy to draw a rainbow, especially when I just have one color of pen, but just imagine it's a rainbow and there's a cloud or something. I don't know. So imagination, and it's like sparkling. Wow, rainbow, so beautiful. Just imagine like all the colors. It's fine. So imagination is when we use our mental capacity to form images or like experiences. So let's say like maybe you're trying to ask somebody out, right? Usually what we do is we kind of like walk through it, or maybe that's what I do. Maybe you guys just jump into it and you're like, I'm gonna just figure it out as I go. But I like to like think through it, right? I'm like, well, how am I going to bring it up, right? Am I going to do the thing where I'm like, oh, so you dating anybody? How about me? So Jeff, I've been married for 3 years. Oh no. So or are you gonna, if they're like a complete stranger, are you gonna say like, hey, I saw you on the opposite side of the room and I decided to talk to you because I think your face is good. And then they're like, oh, well, thank you. I also think my face is good. Here's my Instagram handle. Follow for follow. So all of that did not actually happen in reality. I was imagining what would happen. You too probably imagined with me, right? Now, that is not necessarily what would happen in the real world, right? The person who I assumed might tell me that they're married, maybe they would say, oh my, Jeff, I've been waiting for you to say this. Ask me forever. Let's go. Let's get married right now. We'll have our parents meet us in Guam and we'll get married, right? That could be one way it goes. The person who I approach at the bar, her, girlfriend could be like, yo, man, don't mess with my girl. And I'm like, sorry, sorry. And then I'll do like that thing where like you like put your head down so that people know that you're not threatening. Like it didn't mean anything. Just trying to say that she had a nice face. Like, yeah, I know she has a nice face. That's why I put a ring on it, right? So be careful approaching strangers. You never know what could happen, right? So when you're dealing with the realm of imagination, it can be helpful for figuring out how something might go, but it's not always the best reflection of how things will actually go. And that's imagination in a nutshell. And then we have emotions. Oh, emotions. They are great. Are they? I don't know. Still haven't decided how I feel about emotions. Bam. So when we have an experience in the world and we have emotions attached to it, that can help us make sense of our own feelings about that experience, right? So if I'm feeling angry, then I know that I've been offended. If I'm feeling sad, I know that I've been hurt. If I'm feeling happy, I know that I'm enjoying that experience, right? So emotions tell us how give us insight into our own reality. Now, emotions aren't always perfect as human beings, I'm sure you know. Sometimes our emotions lead us astray, right? You're in a relationship and some parts about a person make you feel happy, but other parts are not great. But then you go, well, if I feel happy sometimes, then it must be good, right? That is what is called splitting. We'll talk about that later in class. But just because sometimes what we do is when there are mixed aspects of a person or a situation where it's some good and some bad, we might just focus on the good or we might just focus on the bad. So sometimes early in a relationship, we might see lots of red flags, but then we're like, oh, but they're so cute. And they make me feel good and like I like them so much, even though they like keep on saying that like they go on weekend trips to murder people. They're gonna change. Like once we've been dating for a while, I'm gonna change them. They're gonna stop murdering people. No, they're not gonna stop murdering people. Get out. So our emotions are great because they provide for a richer understanding and experience of the world, but we can't always trust them. Just because something makes us angry doesn't mean that we have been wronged, right? So we might, discuss something in class, and I might disagree with you, and then you might feel angry about that. Does that mean that like I'm a terrible person who's just trying to hurt you? I mean, maybe. But in most cases, 99.7% of cases, no, right? Sometimes we feel anger or sadness or fear, and those feelings are helpful and informative. But if we put too much stock into them, then we run into issues. Emotions. So last but not least, we have reason. Reason is great because it is what scientists depend on. Now, reasoning isn't always perfect. Sometimes you think that you've made a logical conclusion, and technically it is a logical conclusion, but you still haven't gotten to the truth, right? So let's say um, I've dated three people in my life, and um, two of them were I dated them when I was in my mid 20s. They were in their mid 20s as well. And those relationships ended. And then, like, I took a break from dating. I spent like a whole bunch of time focusing on my work and myself. And then I finally found myself in a relationship with somebody who was in their mid 40s. And that relationship has lasted for the past 5 years. It's very healthy, blah, 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 blah. So, great relationship. My assumption is that the only reason that relationship worked is because people in their mid 20s are too immature to have a relationship. And only people who are older really have the capacity for empathy and warmth and like mutuality that helps a relationship really work. Now, based off of the information I have, that seems like it's true. Dated two people in their mid 20s, worked out perfectly, right? Or did not work out perfectly, worked out terribly. Dated one person in their mid 40s, and it worked out just fine. It's great. I'm the happiest I've ever been, right? Now, my logic is sound. But when I try to take that experience and apply it to the greater world, you might be thinking, oh, I know some people in their mid 40s who do not have it put together. I know some people in their 50s and 60s who are still figuring it out. I know some people in their like mid 20s who like I don't know what class they took that like taught them how to be an adult so well, but they've got it. Like they've got it. So we understand that there are exceptions to the rule, and that's why when we are doing science, we don't just take one study and say, well, this study found this. So that's the way things work. We don't need to examine it anymore because this one study found this. No, science is all about testing and testing and retesting and retesting and doubting and really trying to go, okay, well, we found this, but could we have been wrong? And so you might, if you ever delve into like especially nutritional journals. So there are you might see an article that's like chocolate causes cancer. You got to stop eating chocolate, but also chocolate stops cancer. And also, if you want to prevent cancer, you shouldn't drink any alcohol. But also, if you drink alcohol, then it's going to stop some cancer, but only beer. But also sometimes red wine, but never white wine, unless you're trying to prevent pancreatic cancer, then white wine, right? And so we get all this data that if you take it just by itself and you're just like, well, this one study said this, so it must be true, then you're going to go, well, you're going to have bad information because when you're looking at the truth from a scientific perspective, you get as much information as you can. And then you say, okay, well, this is what we think so far about this phenomena based off of all the information that we have. So recently, we've been seeing this kind of issue with COVID-19 research, where uh, a study will say it doesn't stick on surfaces, and another one says it does. One says that it might stay around in the air, another one says that it might not, right? And so, one criticism of like the CDC and COVID-19 research is that no one knows what they're doing, and they keep on flip flopping and changing their mind, and you can't trust scientists, and blah 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 blah. Which is uh, it's it it misunderstands the uh, what's the word I'm looking for? The uncertainty of scientific research, right? So honestly, what we should be doing as like scientists is like not sharing any results until a lot of testing has been done. But what happens is we will publish a study, it goes into a journal, news outlets will find that study, they'll summarize it, and then they'll report on it. So even though the scientist might say something like, well, we found that there is a chance that the virus might linger around in the air for a while, but the rate of like the chances of that leading to an infection or how that might work in an environment that's not a controlled laboratory still needs to be studied. And then the news outlet will say, breaking news, the virus can exist in the air for up to 30 minutes. So if somebody sneezed 30 minutes ago and you walk outside, you can get the disease. And then the scientists are like, that's not what we said. That's not what we said at all. And then later, when another study changes our understanding of that, we go, well, the scientists were wrong. And the scientists were like, no, no, no. But we never said that in the first place. We presented our information with a healthy level of skepticism, but then it was presented in a completely different way, right? So science and the empirical method is related to this idea of testing, doubting, and continuing to test. So, if anything, science is more trustworthy because scientists are willing to admit when they're wrong, right? When we get new evidence that contradicts what we believe, we go, okay, well, we need to change how we understand this, as opposed to other sources where, just in case you guys didn't know, like taking super high doses of vitamin C and zinc does not make you less likely to get sick. If you didn't know that, now you know. Save your money, or just keep on doing it, because whatever, you're not going to listen to me. But the once we, as a scientific community, realized that that wasn't a thing, we stopped saying do that, right? But then there are people who still insist on telling people that they need to do that, even though there's no scientific proof that it does anything. The only time it would help is if your body already had a deficiency of vitamin C and zinc, which most of us don't. So reasoning is flawed, because we can always have bad data, but if we continue testing and if we continue being skeptical of our results and trying to understand how we might have been wrong, then that will lead us into better understandings of the things that we want to understand. And those are the 8 ways of knowing.